Time just to get himself together, to face the decision, literally, of whether to live or to die. Here in this village, he wrote the most important document we have reflecting the turmoil in his life, the so-called Heiligenstadt Testament. In fact, it's a kind of last will and testament, or possibly suicide note. It certainly wasn't meant to be read during his lifetime. And in this music, he's pouring out those same kinds of feelings, being lost, being abandoned, not knowing which way to turn. Great, we have all this. Let's go letter H. Letter H, A flat major, key of forgiveness. Here we go. He uses the key of C minor to lock down the sense of tragedy, and he uses the key of A flat major to suggest possible visions of hope. You're left against the tempo.
The second movement is the journey from despair to hope, back to despair. It's just a constant push and pull of existence.
I interpret those changes, those contrasts that Beethoven threw in at the time as symbolic of the struggles that he was having, and that he needed to find a way to say, okay, that was really bad, but we need to move on.
While there are glimmers of hope, Beethoven presents his physical and emotional pain with remarkable honesty. As the second movement ends, he tells us again that the sadness won't ever go away. Had Beethoven written only these two movements, it would have been a huge step forward in the Romantic Revolution, in the way that music can represent the way we truly feel. But now Beethoven is going to go in a completely different direction. None of this melodramatic, soul-searching stuff is going to appear for some time to come in this symphony. And when it does, it's going to take us by surprise in a way that only someone with a master plan of the way a symphony could work could possibly imagine. A year later, in 1803, Beethoven returned to new quarters near Heiligenstadt, where his depression gave way to an astonishing burst of creativity. Nourished by the pleasures of country life, Beethoven's musical juices began to flow. He appreciated the exuberance of the local villagers. He identified with their unabashed joy in traditions like the celebration of the wine harvest. It was here, surrounded by the abundance of the fields and vineyards, that much of Eroica was composed. Beethoven began to see new possibilities for his life. So at this point, the symphony takes a completely new direction. He's onto something now. And he decides to write a piece based on this propulsive energy.
The third movement is the best day of your life, when everything is going well and everything is lining up and the sun is shining and the flowers are blooming.
It seems that Beethoven's tired of thinking about the past and heroes and revolutions, and now only wants to think about the future. And I think it's specifically his own future and the future of music. This This music is designed to be amusing and fun, but it's a kind of superhuman fun. It proceeds from squeaky little noises at the threshold of audibility to these vast, big noises that are designed to scare us and keep us off balance. Although we as audience members enjoy every minute of listening to this bouncy piece, for players within the orchestra, it's a supreme test of their ability as players to listen to one another, to stay together, to keep the pulse absolutely on center.
To play that lightly and evenly is one of the most difficult things to do.
Physically, it's very taxing to play it. You're playing all the time. There are tremendous technical challenges. When you see that Eroica is going to be on the program, you kind of have to start getting in shape, not just physically, but emotionally, for the journey that's going to take place.
Now, right in the center of a scherzo, there's traditionally a section called the trio. And here Beethoven writes a trio for 3 French horns. Beethoven lamented in Heiligenstadt that he was so ashamed and sorrowful that he could no longer hear those horns in the distance that his friends thought were so beautiful. Well, now he realizes he doesn't have to worry about that anymore, because in his imagination, he can create whatever horn music he wants.
The standard instrumentation for symphonies was usually a pair of horns. Beethoven decided to add the third. But the second horn part in particular, which is the part I'm playing, involves a lot of acrobatics, which would have been very challenging on a natural horn, and is challenging today even on a modern horn. This is what the players would have had to have done then.
Movements like this show how confident Beethoven was becoming in the power of his imagination. He realized he was creating whole musical worlds here, and by sharing these worlds with us, he could communicate more personally than would ever be possible in the course of his own lifetime. When Beethoven began his Third Symphony, he was writing it for and about Napoleon, about a hero, about grand, even revolutionary ideas. But as events unfolded, he became disillusioned. Beethoven thought of himself as a big, free spirit, a kind of genius of the people, embracing the ideas of spiritual freedom. And he thought for a time that he recognized in Napoleon a hero of the people and the idea of freedom in the realm of politics. That was why he thought of dedicating a huge new symphony to Napoleon. You can see the traces of that in this amazing facsimile made by the Musikfreunde here in Vienna. Here on the title page, we can see the evidences of this. Look, here it says Symphonia Grande. And here is the space where it used to say on Napoleon Bonaparte. But Beethoven, when he got the news that Napoleon had crowned himself Emperor of France, exclaimed, "He's just a rascal like all the others." And he violently erased Napoleon's name, so forcefully, in fact, that he erased his way right through the paper, leaving these holes we still see today. So this revolutionary piece of music that was originally to be the Bonaparte Symphony became simply Eroica, the heroic. But if the hero was no longer Napoleon, who was it? Remember that the Eroica explores what it means to be human. And I think that in facing his own demons, and then in choosing to continue making music, to continue living, Beethoven embraced the heroic in himself, and ultimately in all of us. Remember that I had to go on my own journey of discovery with this piece, and where I started was the fourth movement. Now I ask you, does that music sound heroic? To me, it always sounded comical or provoking. I couldn't work out what Beethoven had meant by these notes, what they were doing at the end of this heroic symphony. Good. Remember, we used to go for the eighth note just a little bit more. Yum, bum, take your theme. Why was he so obsessed on this silly theme? Well, remember when I told you about that encounter he had had with the virtuoso Steibelt? It had ended when Beethoven grabbed Steibelt's cello part, turned it upside down, hammered out a few notes, and embarked on a colossal improvisation. So here we've got the last couple of lines of the cello part of Steibelt's quintet. What do we got here? Not much, really. It's just a bass line chugging along, a note per bar in the key of D. Let's do what Beethoven did. We grab it, we turn it upside down, we look at it for an instant, and we bang out notes now in treble clef. Well, do you recognize it? Here, right here. Yes, good. By writing an improvisation based on this theme, Beethoven could have been saying to the insiders, look how I've bested all of my rivals, even that foppish Parisian Steibelt. And look how I've done it not with mere technical virtuosity, but with brainy brilliance that surpasses anyone now alive. The fourth movement starts, as did so many of Beethoven's improvisations, with a wild flourish simply designed to make people pay attention and shut up.
It's not like drive time radio where you can kind of relax in your car and let it flow over you. It's something that really kind of grabs you and says, listen to me. This is very important, and you're going to live through it with me. The finale of the Eroica starts out with the suggestion that this is going to be fun and games. And for a little while, the perkiness of that theme takes us in that lighthearted way.
When the last movement begins, that's when the flute player's heart starts to beat a little harder. And we have a number of variations that we can go through before we get to the flute variation. It's just about 8 bars of a kind of frenetic, bat out of hell situation. It's that sort of thing instead of go wild.
There are fugues, village dances, virtuoso flute riffs, everything all made out of the stuff of this simple little tune. Fine. Let's go to the poco andante.
The first oboe entrance suggests that maybe something else more serious is going to be going on in this movement, and that Beethoven is going to be wrapping up some ideas and sending us in a different direction.
Just get our composure. Once again, Beethoven has decided that it's the oboe who will be the main bearer of his message, both to introduce the little tune in its most flippant form, and in its most profound form.